So Dehancer hit me up wanting me to make a tutorial and a review about this plugin. Dehancer is a third-party plugin which allows you to create film-like color grades and film effects in DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut, and now After Effects and Premiere Pro. And they didn't pay me, this video is not sponsored, so this is my honest review. I think that Dehancer is a great tool for color grade artists and filmmakers of all levels. The wide range of negative film stocks and the film print stocks is a great library to have to create just an endless amount of looks. And the fact that all the tools within Dehancer are built with the intent to give you as organic and natural and real of a film emulation as possible, I think Dehancer is probably the best third-party plugin out on the market right now that can give you that effect. It's easy to use and it comes with a manual which explains to you what every control is doing. And not only that, Dehancer does have a blog with a bunch of different articles related to color grading and film emulation that'll not only help you use Dehancer better, but it'll actually educate you about the traditional analog process of how film was shot, processed, and printed. Today I'm going to show you how to use this plugin to create a really popular Hollywood cinematic film look. And I'm also going to briefly go over how to use some of the other controls. And I also have a discount code that you can use if you decide you want to add Dehancer to your arsenal as a filmmaker or a colorist. Although I'm going to be working in DaVinci Resolve for this tutorial, you should be able to follow along if you're working in Premiere Pro or Final Cut. Just copy the same adjustments that you see me making and you should arrive at the same result. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to use this shot to create our look. First up, let's go to our project settings. These are the settings that Dehancer recommends in your color management settings if you want to work in a DaVinci wide gamut color space. So you would set your color science to DaVinci YRGB color managed. You would uncheck automatic color management. Your color processing mode, you would set it to custom, and then you would check use separate color space in gamma. You would then set your input color space and your timeline color space to DaVinci wide gamut and DaVinci intermediate. After that, you would set your output color space to Rec 709 and then the output gamma to Rec 709 or gamma 2.4. And if you're working on a Mac, if you find that sometimes after rendering you get this weird gamma color shift in your video, then you can try using Rec 709A and that should help fix that problem. And that's basically it. You can hit save and you're ready to go. So now let's build our node tree. And Dehancer recommends a certain node tree. And although you don't need to necessarily follow that same node tree to get a good result, the node tree that Dehancer recommends promotes good practice and it will do a great job of giving you a good result. The first node is a noise reduction node used to clean up the footage. After that, you have a couple of nodes to adjust your primaries, in this case your contrast and your white balance. After that, you have some masking nodes in case you want to add things like vignette or add some light to a specific subject in your shot. Then after that, you have a CST node in case you want to make any color space transformations to your shot. And then after that, you'll have your node where you drop in the Dehancer plugin. After that, you have a sharpen node in case you want to add some sharpening to your end result. So following the same spirit of that node tree, we're going to have our first node here as a noise reduction node. Then I'm going to add a serial node, and then I'm going to create a parallel node. After that, I'll add a node, and this is where I'm going to drop in the Dehancer plugin. I'm going to leave out the CST node since we don't need to do that for this shot, and I'm also going to leave out the sharpen node. So for the noise reduction here, I'm going to zoom into my shot and see just how much noise reduction we need to apply. So I'll zoom in here and then I'll hit play, and then I can see here on the bumper of this car that we do have a little bit of noise, but overall the shot is pretty clean. So I'm just going to add some very basic light settings and I'll set this to 7. I'll toggle it on and off, and we can already see that that is cleaning up the shot very nicely. To make sure I'm not putting too much pressure on my system, I'm going to deactivate this node and keep it off while we're creating this look. Next thing I'll do is go over to my contrast, and I actually don't need to change it up too much. I feel like this shot already has some good contrast, but I am going to go to the HDR wheels. I'm going to set my color space for this shot and the gamma as well, and then I'll increase the exposure just a little bit. For the white balance, I'm actually not going to do too much, similar to the contrast, because this shot is looking like it's already pretty balanced. The one thing I am going to do in this node though is increase the saturation. So I'm going to rename this node. I'm going to go over to the HDR wheels, and then I'm going to grab the saturation and just bring it up until I feel like I'm getting some more separation in all the hues in the shot. And that's good right there. Now let's drop in our Dehancer plugin. So I'll go to effects, and if you've already installed Dehancer, it should be at the bottom of your effects list. So I'm going to drag it in. I'll turn off the zoom on my vectorscope so I can see it a little better. And real quick, I just want to give you 3 settings that I think will be helpful to you when using Dehancer to create a look. The first one's going to be to go over to your monitor and enable the clipping indication. And this will show you when or if you're ever clipping in your shadows or in your highlights, and you'll be able to see it on your shot. You'll get this red color in the highlights if they're clipping, or in your shadows, if they're too dark and you're losing information, you'll start to get this blue overlay, which is a great feature, and I definitely recommend that you always turn it on before using Dehancer Pro, just so you know that you're not losing any information and that everything that you're doing is within legal. The second thing I'm going to recommend is for you to turn off the grain. Right from the start, Dehancer applies a very strong grain. It might get in the way when you're creating a look, so you can go over to the film grain section and disable it, and now you'll have a much cleaner shot to work with. The last tip I have for you is this. I think when you first use Dehancer and you drag it into the node, it'll look like this with all the menus completely expanded, and for some people this might be a little overwhelming even though everything is nicely organized. So if you want to make this workspace a little cleaner, what you can do is hold down the Option key on your keyboard and click on any of these titles here. Then that'll collapse everything, and now you have all these controls in front of you, and you can go in real quickly and make adjustments and then get out of them and go on to the next adjustment. So now let's actually build our look. The first thing we're going to do is go over to our input. We are working with Rec. 709 footage in a DaVinci wide gamut color space, so we're going to set our source to DaVinci wide gamut Rec. 709. This is also part of the recommendations that Dehancer makes when working with DaVinci wide gamut. After setting the input, we're going to go over to our film, and now we're going to choose our film stock. So what's really cool about Dehancer is that it comes with tons of different film stocks, both photographic and motion picture film stocks, that you can use to create very aesthetic and unique looks for your videos. It gives us the opportunity to work with the famous Kodak Vision 3 series of film stock, which is used all the time in Hollywood movies and independent films as well. So we have 4 options here, and the film stock we're going to use is the Kodak Vision 3 50D. Traditionally, these 4 film stocks are used for different lighting conditions, and this letter at the end of the name will sort of be your guide for that. So the D here in the 50D and the 250D stands for daylight, and the T in the 500T and the 200T stands for tungsten. So these 2 film stocks with the letter D at the end are traditionally used with natural light. The 50D is preferred for outdoor settings, and then the 250D is preferred for indoor settings that is using natural light from the sun. Since this is an outdoor shot under daylight, we're gonna go with the 50D. And if I enable and disable that, we can see that we're already starting to get some of that film stock characteristic in our shot. Now that we've set our film stock, we're gonna go over to the film compression control and enable it. And what this control does is it helps us add some compression into the highlights and bring down the white point of our shot, giving us a more analog look. I like what the default settings are giving us, but I'm gonna grab this impact control here and decrease it, which will give us a little bit more brightness in our highlights. After adding some film compression, we're gonna go over to the expand control, and then we're gonna set our black point and our white point for this shot. So I'll grab my black point here and increase it until I'm getting my shadows into a place that I like. And that's good there. Now I'll go over to my white point and increase that. And just leave it somewhere where it's giving me some nice contrast. If I enable and disable it, we can see the effect that the expand control is giving us. After making these adjustments in the expand, I'll go over to the print. This is another great feature about Dehancer. It allows you to add the filmic characteristics of printing on a Kodak 2383 print film. And this combination of shooting with a Kodak Vision 3 negative film stock and then printing on a Kodak 2383 print film is very widely used in Hollywood and independent movies because of the nice color aesthetics and the color science that it gives your shot. Also, the S-curve that the Kodak 2383 print film gives you also helps you in creating a nice filmic look, as well as some great color contrast. After you set your print, if you feel like your shot kind of went out of the bounds that you had set in the expand controls, you can go back to the expand controls and set your black point again and your white point. So I'll just do that real quickly. And that's good right there. I'll hide that. And back here in the print section, we have controls that help us to emulate the actual real life process of film printing. First up, I'm gonna enable this analog range limiter. Now I'm gonna go over to the target white control, which acts as a sort of temperature control, and I'm gonna warm up the shot. Now I'll go over to the exposure controls and brighten up the shot just a little bit. I'll go down to the tonal contrast and increase that as well. The way that this color density control is working is great because it allows you to adjust the saturation of your shot without giving you a digital look, and it's not just bringing up all the hues in your shot and adding saturation to them, it's affecting aesthetically significant colors, so it's enhancing that nice color science that the Kodak 2383 print film is giving you. If I move over to this frame here and I increase the color density all the way, We can see how it's affecting the saturation of certain colors, like this messenger bag here, and making them stand out just a little bit more, but not oversaturating them. It's just making them a lot more dense and visible. I'm gonna leave that color density control there. If you're ever using this color density control and you boost it up all the way, depending on your footage, you might start to see artifacts in your shot. If you do, just go ahead and decrease that until those artifacts disappear. I'm gonna go back to this frame here as I wanna see my subject's face for this next part. After making adjustments in the print settings, let's go over to our color head. You can think of this color head section as where you're gonna get creative with building your look. You can think of it as your split toning section. We'll check the enabled control and then we'll get started in these first three controls here. So these first three controls here, if I move them, you can see how they're affecting our shot. They're adding a specific color to our shot, which we can then use depending on the colors already in our shot to build a look. Let's analyze this shot real quick to see what colors we have, which will then better inform us for creating a specific look for this shot. We can see that we have this nice blue added by the Kodak 2383 print film, and then we have this green here over on this wall. We have these warmer tones in our subject. I want to expand it a little bit and get back some of this green in our shot. So in order to add a little bit more green in our shot, specifically this wall over here, I'm gonna add some yellow to our shot. I'm liking that right there. Very subtle adjustments will do when working with these controls. Now I'll go over to the magenta and green controls and move them around and see what I'm getting. I like that it's bringing a little bit more life back into our subject. But I don't want it too magenta, so I'm gonna be very light with it. I'm keeping an eye on her skin tones, not just here in the shot, but I'm also looking down here, making sure that our mask in the vectorscope is lined up with the skin tone indicator. And then lastly, I'll grab the cyan and red control and then play around with that and see what we're getting. That's good there. I just added a little bit more red to warm it up. These shadows, midtones, and highlights tone controls are really cool. They basically allow you to adjust the temperature in certain ranges of luminance values. So this shadow tones control here allows you to adjust the temperature in your shadows, and you can cool them down or warm them up. For this shot here, I think I'm going to warm them up just a little bit, so I'll move it over to the right. For the mid-tone control, again, you have the option to cool them down or warm them up. And to help create a little bit more separation, I'm gonna cool them down just a little bit. For the highlights, same thing, you can cool them down or warm them up. And I'm actually gonna cool them down just a little bit. And now we can see that we've just slightly adjusted the colors in our shot, keeping within the same color palette, just making a few adjustments to create a little bit more separation between the blue, the green, and the warmer hues in our subject. During the real traditional printing process, where you would use a color head, which are essentially filters, these adjustments would affect the brightness of the shot. So if I take this all the way down to 0, which is essentially turning off the control, and I move this around, you can see that we're not just adding color to our shot, but we're also affecting the brightness of our shot. If I turn this back up, this control makes up for those changes in the exposure when using the color head. This impact slider here can be thought of as the opacity slider for the color head section. Now let's add some grain to our shot. So let's enable the grain. And like I said before, the default grain that's added to your shot is a little heavy. You can decrease the amount and that'll help a little bit, but if you feel like even that's still too much, go over to the film type and set it to positive. The positive film type is going to give you a softer and more subtle grain. And even with those settings, if you still find that the grain is too aggressive, you can go over to your shadows, midtones, and highlights and decrease them until you get a result that you like. I'm kind of liking where this is at, but I want to decrease it just a little bit. So I'll take these three values here and subtract 20 from all of them. And you can get creative with the type of grain you're applying to your shot, but a good rule of thumb is to keep more grain in the midtones than in the shadows and the highlights. This chroma control here affects the saturation in the noise. I'm going to turn that down because I don't like too much saturation in my noise. Great, now that we've added some film grain, let's add some bloom. This bloom control here is similar to the glow effects in DaVinci Resolve, but the controls are very different. For this shot, I want a nice subtle bloom, so I'll enable this, and then I'll go over to the diffusion and increase that. And if I enable this on and off, we can see that we're getting just the lightest effect on areas here like this sign here, our subject, the buildings around this light source here. It's very subtle, and that's exactly what I want. This impact control here can be thought of as the opacity slider for this effect, and I'm actually just gonna increase it the tiniest bit, and that's good right there. A nice subtle glow around just specific highlights in the shot. And that's how you can use Dehancer Pro to create a very quick and simple but aesthetically pleasing cinematic type film emulation. Dehancer is a powerful tool and a great plugin to have in your arsenal and your library of effects if you are a colorist or a filmmaker and even a photographer, since Dehancer does have a Photoshop and a Lightroom version of the plugin. If you're looking to add a touch of film authenticity to your project, Dehancer is definitely a great option for that. And if you want a nice discount off of Dehancer, you can use the code GEORGE and get 10% off Dehancer. As always, if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, and thank you for watching.